Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Observe and Rapport Show, episode number 16. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how we doing today?
Couldn't be better, pal. Couldn't be better.
Beautiful.
You kidding me?
Beautiful. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How are you looking to start off 2024?
Well, you know, I said I was going to do a January.
A dry January. Hey, little damp January.
That's what I was just going to say. I saw a damp January.
Yeah.
Which, dude, makes more sense.
Way more sense.
Listen, I did a dry January, right? I did
It's
it a couple of
stupid.
years.
It's
so
stupid.
fucking
It's
stupid.
dumb.
You feel worse. You feel literally worse. I felt worse. I felt depressed.
Yeah.
And like,
because you're depriving yourself.
Yeah.
It's like a punishment.
and dude, look, we gotta stop demonizing everything. Like, just because some people can't have a few beers without killing a hooker and like crashing their car and ruining their life doesn't mean you can't have a couple of beers a couple of times
Right.
a week. Like, what's the big deal? As long as you're not ruining your life, you can't go to work, you're beating your wife, whatever it is. Like, what's the problem with having a couple?
So I'll say I've done all the diets, all the challenges, right? Of like no carbs, no alcohol, no fun, like all those things.
Yeah, like it's
and
not...
every time I've done a dry January or something like that, I've lasted maximum 3 weeks.
Dude.
That's the break every time. The breaking point is around day 17 to day 20.
Yeah.
You're just like, fuck this. I need a drink. Like, this is too, like something stressful is going on. You need an outlet of some sort, right? You need a dessert.
They call it a spirit, you know, like it's got life in it. You can't not drink.
So in general,
You can't.
In general, I now drink way less.
I saw your post about that you drink 5 drinks a week.
Yeah, that's a great,
Sure.
like,
Little low for me.
little low for some people.
Yeah.
I originally, I mean, if I'm being honest, I kind of set it at like 2 drinks a week.
Do you?
Unless it's like I'm, going out to dinner with friends, or like if I have something planned, obviously I'm breaking that rule.
How often do you get drunk?
I don't really.
That's the thing.
I don't.
I really don't like get like fucked up anymore. You know?
If I'm at a wedding, I'll get drunk.
That's what I mean. Wedding,
That's
birthday
really
party,
the only
whatever.
exception. Outside of that, even if it's a dinner with friends, it's like maybe 3 glasses of wine, 3 cocktails max.
Yeah.
Enough of a buzz that it's like I might not be able to drive home.
Right, right.
That's probably my max. I don't even like getting drunk anymore because
No, it sucks, honestly.
the hangovers just aren't worth it.
hangover,
Once you hit
man.
30,
Oh my
it's not worth
God.
it. So I think I'm bad at moderation, like in general. So I used to try to like stick to these regiments of like no drinking 30 days, but because I'm bad at just being like, oh, I'll have a few. Like, that's stupid. But now that I actually set a rule that's like 5 drinks a week, if I have 1 on Monday, I have 2 on Wednesday, Friday, I'm just like, yeah, all right, I'll have 2 more. I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, I don't feel like I'm being naughty. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm still being healthy and responsible. But, a damp January.
Damp January. I cut back, you know. I'm not as many train beers, right? Like not as many,
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
like just randomly having a beer for no reason. I'm not doing that anymore. But like this is an event to me. I love this
because I hated when I would do dry January and like someone would be like, "Hey Kyle, let's have a glass of whiskey," and I'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I'm doing dry January." That.
It's like doing no nut November. It's like just grow up and jerk
Yeah.
off already, or what? Just stop. What do you think this is doing for you? Like we got to stop demonizing. I listened to a podcast once about a dude. I couldn't believe it. I literally just randomly was like, okay, sure, I'll listen to this. And it was a guy who was making a case for alcohol. He was like, yo, people don't understand how much we owe to booze and beer and liquor and shit. Like the fact that alcohol has influenced culture and society for like millennia at this point. And like the reason why it's so influential is not just because it makes you drunk and makes you happy, but like the Irish, for example, a lot of the reason why kids used to drink beer or cider or something is because it was safer to drink than water, because you have to boil it. It has to ferment. So a lot of the bacteria would get killed off in the process. And yeah, you'd get a little drunk and whatever, but like it's way better than dying of fucking, whatever the hell was in the water.
Yeah.
So like, it became kind of like a generational thing. You just drink at a young age and like whatever. But things like coffee, tea, beer, liquor, things that have to be, boiled, like hot drinks. Dude, it all coincide historically with enlightenments and renaissances. And
yeah, apparently in like 1776, during the Revolutionary War, people started drinking coffee after the Boston Tea Party because they were like, fuck this tea shit.
That makes sense. Well, if they're going to fuck with the tea.
Exactly.
Now
And then coffee became a popular thing during like the Restoration, and it developed a lot of the public discussion. That's where like Benjamin Franklin would go to the coffee house and like have like intellectual discussions with people, and that's where they'd write, their pamphlets and stuff and discuss ideas. So it's got a rich history.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just enough of the demonizing of things, honestly.
Yeah,
it's
know what?
I'm just sick of once one person finds one thing wrong with something, it's like you got to never do it again. It's like, just have some self-control.
Well, you know me, I'm like I'm an experimenter. I like to tinker, right? So if there is a debate about the health or effectiveness of something, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
So like, right, I tried giving up alcohol. I did, no nut November. I've done all of these things. One thing I thought about this year, and I talked about it with Lauren, was potentially trying to give up caffeine for 30 days.
Okay. I've done that.
I've gone against it.
Dude, but go ahead.
It's not worth it, first off.
It's not worth it. And I dare, you know what? Go ahead.
Yeah, I know.
Try it. Dude, the first 10 hours,
brutal.
You're gonna be like, fuck it.
Well, you know what?
I'm telling you.
I forget who I heard talk about that they gave up. It was someone on like the Tim Ferriss podcast, gave it up for like 3 months.
But why?
No, but you know what they said? This was what interested me. They said, it was Kevin Rose on the Tim Ferriss podcast. He said, he was like, the first 10 days, you have a massive headache. Oh no, you know what? It was Duncan Trussell on Joe Rogan. I think he talked about it.
Oh, really?
He said the first 10 days, massive headache.
The whole time, dude.
He also said the same thing about when he gave up sugar. First 10 days, massive headaches. After those 10 days, he was like, felt amazing. He's like, I felt like I was back to like my baseline level as like a 13-year-old kid with just like endless energy. So the thing that he said that interested me was, he goes, how many 10 days of headaches away are most people from feeling amazing?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really
Fair
cool
enough
point. And I'm like, you don't have to give up caffeine to do it, but the simple things, right? Giving up like sugary soda drinks, or giving up bread.
Look, that
and
shit
stuff.
I'm all about.
But how many people who eat all that stuff or consume all that stuff are 10 days away from just like headaches and cravings? But on that 11th day, they realize, holy shit, what have I been missing out on for the last 40 years?
I know.
I know. That's what interested me about it.
It's just that, like, also I know people who don't drink coffee and they're no more energetic than I am.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it might just be all placebo or something, like you're just reacting to something you don't have now.
I also don't really feel like I drink coffee necessarily for the caffeine. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a part of it that gives me a little, like, you need it in the morning.
I'm not someone who goes off the walls because I drink coffee either.
There's been days where I've like forgotten to drink coffee.
Yeah.
Or like if I have a flight or something and I just don't drink, and I feel pretty much fine. A little groggy, but like I more so drink it because I like the ritual. I like the taste. I like having a cup of coffee in my hand. I like going to the coffee shop.
But isn't coffee good for you? Like, it's antioxidants. And,
but you know what? They said the same thing about alcohol, and now everyone's saying how alcohol is just like awful for you. So whenever you hear, like, now people just have such a distrust for the media. Whenever you hear like, oh yeah, coffee's great for you, I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no.
Like,
and I definitely didn't hear that on the news, but like, yeah, I mean, I just don't think that's going to kill me.
No, it's not going to kill you.
You know how much you got to drink? Do you know how much you got to drink to kill yourself with booze? Bro, you would have to become such a problem first in your life for this to affect you in a healthy way or in a health sense. Like, look, okay, whatever. It raises your blood pressure every once in a while. They say it kills brain cells, but I'm over here talking about Jean-Jacques Rousseau while drinking. So, like, what the hell? I mean, I don't...
Imagine what you'd be talking about if you didn't.
That's what I mean. Would I be Albert Einstein, for Christ's sake?
Probably.
I mean, seriously.
Probably. You're a 10-day headache away from being Albert Einstein.
I guess so. Look, all I'm saying is, we talked about this on the first episode, like social media. People like, I know guys, they're like, I deleted Instagram, I deleted Facebook, I deleted TikTok. I'm like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Just stop following the thoughts, stop following all this nonsense, and use it for something good. You can use this if you're responsible. I think that's the key, is moderation, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, man, it's like, you can't just give up the addiction for being addicted to not doing it
Right.
at the same time. Like you're just trading
which I've definitely been guilty of for sure.
I've
done like the getting addicted to like, dude. So
You know?
I asked you like 2024, what are you focused on? Literally, my goal this year is to fucking chill.
Yeah,
Like,
dude, you're so out of your fucking mind.
I'm too. Me and Lauren did this. We bought like a big calendar because I prefer digital, Google Calendar, just putting it in my phone. Lauren's more of a, analog. She needs the paper and pen calendar. So we compromised. We got like a, paper calendar. We planned out kind of like our first 3 months of the year. Just like, what events do we have? When do we want to see friends, etc. But before we did that, we went through our 2023, like month by month, and looking at our schedule, we were like, what the fuck were we doing?
Yeah, man.
Like we were doing all the things we said we wanted to do, but we were burnt the fuck out.
Yeah.
Because we were just
What was it? Like a lot of
I mean, we were doing, it was job obligations, it was seeing our friends, it was traveling, it was like spending a shit ton of money doing home renovation projects, like fire department stuff, and just overloading our schedules for no reason. And we were burning ourselves out. And until we went back and looked at it, we were like, yeah, we were having a good time, but we were also exhausted in a lot of those key points throughout the year.
Yeah.
So our goal this year when we flipped to 2024 was just like, all right, we can still do all of those things, but like maybe scale back like 50% and like actually enjoy our like free time.
Sure.
And still
like as a couple,
but also like still see friends, still do our obligations. But like, I think we're both such driven people that we feel like we have to do more. And it's like, you don't have to, we're already operating at 110%. It's okay if we go down to like 80.
Watching you is like, it's like, the fire department, jujitsu, ice baths, getting tattoos, waking up at 5 a.m, going to bed at 8 o'clock, whatever the hell, reading 6 books a day, writing the blog, doing the podcast, the newsletter. It's like, will you just sit down? Like, what the fuck are you doing?
I know. And you know what? I'm such a like psychopath that like,
and I'm not trying to like suck your balls here. Like, I'm not complimenting you. I mean, I am, but like, I just mean like, it's okay.
But you know what's funny? I'm such a psychopath.
What are you running from, Kyle?
I think that I'm lazy.
You're...
That's
mental.
How my
you have a mental
that's
problem.
how my brain works though, is that I'll be doing all these things and I'm like, you know what, I'm not doing enough, I need to be doing more, and I just over fucking load my plate, and then I'm like, why am I so stressed? Why am I like, why can't I relax?
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like you guys are about to spend a lot more time together, right?
Yes.
And then you guys will eventually have a child because you're married and you're spending time together and whatever. And this energy can go into a child.
Right.
Dude, you're going to raise the next, Nikola Tesla or something.
Yeah.
Because like, dude, like at the end of the day, you get your tattoos, you do your jiu-jitsu, you do your ice baths, you break your thumb, whatever the fuck you want to do with your time.
That was actually what kind of got me.
It's like, listen, you can just have the kid. Just have it. Like, it's okay, And like, because I did it, but like, I didn't mean to. But you realize it's a beautiful thing. And you still have time somehow. And also what happens is, it's kind of to your point, everyone comes to you now. Because you've got the baby.
That's true.
So you don't really have to go like, I got to plan this with this person. I got to do this with that. Like, everyone's coming to your house. Everyone's coming to you. Dude, see, having a kid, a lot of benefits,
That's
dude.
the hack. The life hack.
I'm telling
you. Have
you.
a kid, everyone comes to you.
Right. Listen, hopefully they're not a serial killer or whatever, but like, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Like, so speaking of the kid, what to our New Year's resolution, we want to move because not out of town. Well, maybe it depends on the price and whatever, but she's getting older. She needs her own room.
Right,
we live in a 1-bedroom,
more space.
Yeah, so we're trying to get a 2-bedroom going this year. The real goal, smash that smash that, get a new, it's not gonna happen.
You reading Dave Ramsey?
Yeah, Dave Ramsey, bro. I love Dave Ramsey. He's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't know. Home ownership is,
what?
got its pros and cons.
Man, I hear every guy I work with, he's like, I got to do 4 doubles a week just to make the nut. Like on my mortgage. I'm like, that doesn't sound great. I think the American dream has become more of a daydream now. It's not like a real, actual, like, oh, I dream of owning a home. Like, it's becoming more like, do you really need to do that? And I get why, like, generational wealth and blah-de-blah and whatever, and like, you really build up some finance there. But dude, it's just the times are changing, and I'm learning to embrace the change more than I am like trying to fight against it and just buy the home because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, and home ownership is definitely, I would say it's an even 50-50 of the pros and cons. The pros are amazing, right? You get so much space, like
hosting holidays.
The big thing for me was just having a yard. Like having a yard is one of the best things ever, which like you do luckily in your situation, but like, if you're renting in like a condo or like a luxury building or something, you just
that kind of sucks.
You just have your space, right? And like you take the elevator up and like you don't really interact with nature and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'd say
that does kind of suck.
The cons are also pretty fucking annoying.
Right?
The amount of just fucking last night there was a huge windstorm. A tree in our backyard.
What's with the trees in this?
Dude, a tree fell into
this town is, they're all 100,000 years old, these trees.
Tree fell into our neighbor's yard. Yeah. Get a knock on the door. Nice neighbor. Hey, he's like, your tree fell into our backyard. And I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do?
$3,000?
What do I do?
Yeah.
I was like, do we split that? And he's like, well, I think it's, in your yard. And I'm just like, motherfucker. So
you're like,
now like that's the thing I got to deal with. And I'm like, oh, of course it's not, cheap.
Yeah.
Well,
you know
what it is though? Like, I think true wealth today now is being able to do whatever you want with your time. True wealth, to me at least, and maybe that it's a generational thing too.
This is a great segue into the book I'm reading.
True wealth, I think, has nothing to do with what you own and your material possessions. I think it has your philosophy on money, mine might be completely different than yours. The amount of money that I need might be very different from the amount of money that you might think you need. But at the end of the day, it's really just about like, can you wake up and do whatever you want with your time? To me, and not worry about money. To me, that's true wealth.
The book I'm reading says
Keith is the master of segues. By the way,
the book I'm reading says that it's not your opinion. Time is the measurement of your happiness, like your free time. Like, there's this idea that like, this study came out like a few years ago that says, money doesn't actually make you happier. Money doesn't actually affect your happiness after $50K a year or something like that. If you have enough money for shelter, basic necessities, it doesn't affect your
number,
happiness.
by the way, is probably closer to like 115K.
By the way, well, first of all, even if it was that's not true, because if you do that study is bullshit. If you have a lot of money, it does mean, statistically speaking, they did this, this whatever study research with like wealthy neighborhoods, right? All these people make a lot of money. They're happy people. And it's because they have free time, because they have the money, right? That's the difference, is that the money translates to free time in like reality, right? So it is the key to happiness. It is the key to fulfilling your satiation for life, is your free time. But money, it's kind of the transactional part of that. Like, how much money do you have so that you can do that? So the book I'm reading, by the way, is The Rational Optimist.
Matt Ridley. Great book.
Dude, it's such a great fucking book.
I need to reread that. I read it like 5-6 years ago.
It came out, it was published in 2010, and it made the circuits. It was in the podcast circuit being talked about for years, because it's a very good book. And the reason why I think it's so good is because he gives you so many examples, so many statistical examples, and the evidence for the research meaning what it means. And Matt Ridley, if you don't know, he's a writer, journalist, and businessman, British in Britain, and he writes regularly for the Times, which is like their daily national newspaper. funnily enough, researching him, I found out that we talked about like Long Island influence and like, technologically entertainment, whatever. He actually was a professor at the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory.
No way.
For a little while. I
Right,
had no
right down the road.
Exactly. So funny. Anyway, he wrote this book called The Rational Optimist, and it's about how, these days, if you're an optimist, it's kind of looked at as like you're naive or you're childish or you're being unrealistic. But when you look at the evidence from the research and the statistics, we aren't living in a bad time. In fact, quite the contrary. We're living in the best time that you could ever live in. There is no argument. Right now is the greatest time to be alive. It's a fact.
No doubt.
And, you find out from reading the book, he gives a million examples of why that's the case. But you find out from reading it that he's not optimistic because of some predisposition in temperament, or like he's not actively trying to look on the bright side. It is the facts of the matter that this is the greatest time to be alive. For example, coming back to money, right? 99% of the Americans who are considered to be poor, living in poverty, have flushing toilets, running water, electricity, and refrigerators. That's the 99% of them. The 95% of those people also have televisions. 88% of those people have a smartphone, and 75% of them have a car and air conditioning. Cornelius Vanderbilt had none of those things.
Right.
And he was the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
Over 120 years ago. Now, the pessimist would say, well, yeah, but that's only because those things didn't exist. But in 1970, 30% of Americans, not poverty, all Americans had air conditioning. He gives so many examples of why it's not even comparable, like the time we're living in now. What I loved, my favorite, was the comparison between the average person today and King Louis XVI. Okay, who was the richest man, wealth you can't even imagine.
I went to his house in Versailles.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. But he had 496 servants, right? Those people were dedicated to cooking his meals, making his bed, bathing him, his kids, his wife, multiple wives, his family, everybody that lived in his castle. They were his people. The average person today has 10,000 people working for them at any given moment.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you really think about it, man, for right now, I could go on my phone and book a flight to Australia. King Louis XVI wouldn't even bother thinking about going to Australia because he could never go.
Right.
There's no way he could coordinate that happening for himself. That's just one example too. And not even that, but I can order food to my front door that other people will make, right? And then you think about how many people went into that process alone. The chicken, right? The farmer who farmed those chickens, then killed those chickens, then cut them up to be processed, and then the driver who drove that chicken to the place to get cooked, and then the people who cooked that food, then the person who built that business, and the person who picked up the food to drive it to my house. That's like 100 people right there working for me because I touched my phone in certain spots at the right time. It's literally, bro,
insane.
This book opened my mind to how seriously crazy the time that we live in. There is no species, obviously, that has even come close to creating this much prosperity. The idea of prosperity alone, the fact that prosperity exists in the majority now for the human race is insane.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I can't even, the average South Korean from 1955 compared to now lives 27 years longer.
Damn.
That's an insane 28 years if you're Chinese. And that's because those people are now being serviced by thousands of chemists and, medicinal, researchers and people who are working on, penicillin and antibiotics and medications and things and distributing that, right? I mean, let me before I keep going on about examples, he talks about how the difference between human beings and other mammals is that we have what's called collective intelligence, right? He starts the book off by saying there's an axe on my desk from 500,000 years ago. I'm also using a Bluetooth mouse to make. Both of these things were made by human beings, and they're both made to fit in your hand. The difference is one person made this axe, but I don't know, 500 people made this mouse between the plastic, the laser, the technology, the firmware that it uses. It never ends. The amount of collective intelligence that we've accumulated as a species, and we work together to create things that benefit everybody. And he says the big quote from that book is, exchange is to cultural evolution what sex is to biological evolution. The fact that we trade, right, and you give me this and I give you that whole agreement is very human and very unique to our species, and it's actually the main difference between us and everybody else.
It multiplies everything.
Bro, it's everything.
2 goes to 4, 4 goes to 8.
Trade is everything. That's just why capitalism is. It's the reason why capitalism is, the catalyst for the most successful, situations as far as like nations are concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting that kind of segues into, first off, I want to say, I love that book.
It's really great.
When I read that book too, I think that was one of the, if you go back to Observe and Rapport, my Instagram, like that's probably like my 3rd post, because it might have been one of the books that inspired me to start the page, because I was like, that book blew me away so much that I was like, I need to tell people about this, because like it wasn't like a well-known book, and it still isn't
really
that
opens
well-known.
your eyes, man.
It's not like Atomic Habits, which is all over your social media. Like,
I wish I had read that then and not Steven Pinker's book.
That book, and it's short, right? It's only like 250 pages, 300 maybe. The book I'm reading is kind of an interesting segue, because it's almost talking about the abundance of how much is available to us today, which was Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. Dopamine, obviously Huberman has like kind of, put that word into like the zeitgeist now. Everyone knows what dopamine is and trying to optimize their dopamine levels and serotonin, whatever it is. This book was very mind-blowing. She talks about how we're currently in a world where the quote that I loved was, we're like cacti in the rainforest, meaning we have an abundance.
We don't need all this water.
We have an abundance of water, and aka pleasure-inducing drugs and substances that we don't know what to do with. It's overwhelming, right? Between the drugs that we have access to, like alcohol, cannabis, porn, nicotine, all these things, and also digital drugs, social media, gambling, all of these things, like it's just so easy to access that we're shunning ourselves away from suffering and pain because pleasure is so easy to seek. So we're a culture that is avoiding pain in every way possible.
And that's a bad thing.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because pain is an inevitable part of life, and it ultimately leads to growth, right? Like think about anything successful you've done in your life was the result of some pain and suffering in some way.
We need resistance to overcome.
And the book is basically, it explains all the science and chemistry behind what these drugs are doing to our brain and altering us. And they're actually, so what's interesting is dopamine it's a seesaw. So if you have, 5 beers, your dopamine level of pleasure goes up, right, to a certain degree. And anytime your dopamine gets spiked and goes up, there's an equal negative response. So at a certain point, that will flip.
It's interesting how often I forget that.
Yeah, and your pain or guilt or shame will basically result in the opposite of that. And when you start to overflow your system with pleasure over and over and over again, and you're never actually experiencing that pain, because by the time it comes, you say, I'm going to have another 5 beers. Yeah. And you just keep raising that. Eventually that comes crashing down. Why am I having
an epiphany about like what addiction is with this analogy?
And it's a cyclical thing, right? Because you never actually allow yourself to feel that pain. You drown it out through more pleasure, whether it's porn or gambling or social media.
Of this meta true. It's so true.
Yes.
Phenomenon that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Correct.
So you're trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
I see.
So the message of her book is kind of like we're medicating away true feelings basically. Through opioids. She talks a shit ton about opioids. Dude, the craziest fact she talked about was, so when morphine came into the scene, and I don't know if it was like the 50s or 60s, that was like a revolutionary drug because people could get shot in the field of battle, and morphine injections would,
Well, it existed in World War II, so it must have been earlier.
Okay, yeah.
The 30s, 40s, whatever.
40s. So she was talking about fentanyl, which is now prescribed for like so many people. And whether it's Oxycontin or fentanyl is 50 times.
No, bro, the numbers are crazy.
50 times more potent. 50
Yep.
more
I know.
potent than heroin. 100 times more potent than morphine. It's crazy.
That's why all these addicts are dying. It's a real
crazy.
problem.
And like
100,000 people died last year from fentanyl overdoses.
And the chemistry of that is so overwhelming to our system that we can't say no to it. Essentially, it's so pleasurable.
On Softwood Underbelly, I just wanted to your point. I've talked about this on the show that the ex-heroin addicts who are like reoccurring interviewees, they're now on fentanyl, and they say, "Oh, heroin, it's like a joke. Like I can't do heroin anymore." It's not the same thing, even though it is. The potency is so drastically different that I can only do fentanyl. Yeah. Heroin is like, smoking a cigarette when you want to smoke crack. It's like,
Could you imagine? Like, imagine if you had a drink that was 50 times more potent than the beer you're drinking.
Bro. I mean,
50.
That you have a problem.
Crazy.
To your point on abundance, in this book with Matt Ridley's book, the statistic blew me away, man. Like on Manhattan Island, you can buy it's estimated you can buy 10 billion different things. Like we have so much, dude, at our disposal. It's incredible. Bro, the things that are common for the average person, like I talked about, Cornelius Vanderbilt he didn't even know he couldn't even think that it would be accessible to him. Like it's truly out of control, man.
Yeah.
It really is. And, but like the whole thing about him and his argument is that it's to be optimistic because since 1800, he says, the population of humans has grown sixfold. Okay. And everybody was very worried about population, right? Everybody was over the years like, oh, there's too many people. But life expectancy has doubled since 1800. So like there is no evidence at all that suggests that there's too many people. It's literally made up.
Do you believe you see a lot of these guys on like podcasts now, these like science and health gurus who say that the first person to live to 150 has already been born?
Yeah.
Do you believe all this stuff? Have we talked about this?
Yes, but they've said way more drastic things. Michael Sherman in the book Heavens on Earth, we've talked about it on the show. I've read it. He said that the first person to live to be 500 years old has already been born. And this book came out like 5 years ago. So
I don't know if I believe that.
And by the way, he backs up his argument by saying that he has intelligence through his community of academics about nanomechanics, meaning nanomachines. But when he says nanomechanics, he's talking about people who would operate these things. Where he talked about a world where you would take a pill essentially, and you have a tumor in your stomach or your, I don't know, bladder, wherever the fuck, doesn't matter. And these nanomachines would go into your body and treat your body like a cleanup site, and they would target the tumor specifically and clean it up for you and just basically rid you of the issue without any surgical intervention, getting rid of all the infection possibilities and the things for, all that stuff. So that wasn't the only argument he backed up, but that was the one that really got me because I was like, that sounds like it could happen, like nano machines doing surgeries internally, like while you're at work, like it doesn't even matter. Like it's just taking care of it. You piss it out, whatever. He talked about that kind of tech like 5 years ago, and he said that that's all happening and already in the works. So you can imagine, and to this point about Matt Ridley's book, you can be as pessimistic as you want, but we're in a time right now with the world banks are collapsing. We owe trillions in debt. There's a whole list of reasons why you could say the world sucks. But statistically, the probability that in 2124, 100 years from now, the human race will be in a better position than it is now is like almost 100% the case. Like, think about 100 years ago. Again, no one had air conditioning. No one had a refrigerator. People died from a toothache because it would spread to their heart. And penicillin wasn't a thing 100 years ago. I mean, just about now it was getting distributed and invented, but whatever, in the 1920s. So, but before that, if you had a bacterial infection, you just died, man. Yeah. It was very simple, right? Like, so the reason that you have to be optimistic is because this exchange that we talked about, it acts on we talked about, what's the Huberman drug? Dopamine, the hormone. Oxytocin is the thing that you feel when you trust someone and you engage with them. Like, it's the thing that you get with your mother or your father as a child, that feeling of trust, that this person is here for my well-being. You get that same kind of hormonal exchange when you trade something with someone. And he talks about how, we kind of hacked that hormonal process by trading with each other, because it feels good. Because when you do trade with someone and the outcome isn't good for both people, that's called coercion or exploitation. And exploitation is bad. That's like slavery and things like that, where I'm getting something and you're getting nothing. But when both people get something that they want, that's a high. And we kind of like flourished on that as a species, and it became, literally the basis of our societies and our culture. Like, it became what we use to progress as a species, as far as like longevity and as far as our capabilities for technology. It's a really interesting concept. And it's like, there's no reason to think that in 100 years, someone might live to be 500. I don't know if they are alive right now. It's kind of like, I think that's a little far-fetched personally, but at the same time, I just read a book about optimism, so I can't say I don't believe in it.
I mean, 500's definitely pretty...
500's a lot.
That's pretty optimistic.
And that would cause a whole other bunch of issues, right?
150 I can get on board with. 500, I'm like...
150, I believe the oldest person who ever lived was like 130 or something.
Yeah. Something around there. Probably somewhere in like Asia. I feel like they're always living longer over there.
Let me get into more of these statistics, man, because I remember a few of them off the top.
Your recall is like insane. I don't know how you... Like, I read a book and I forget 95% of it the next day, and you somehow are pulling out like 62.3%. Like, I don't know how you do it.
I just had an argument about this with my sisters and my wife, but like, everyone thinks they're autistic now for some reason. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm on the spectrum." I'm on the spectrum.
It's like the cool thing.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm actually on the spectrum." It's like, why? Because you fucking remember something you said 10 years. Like, who cares?
Or you don't know how to talk to someone.
I really do recall. Like, movie quote, I can. My parents.
You've been that way since we were kids.
Exactly.
Like, you could. I remember, like, me and my brother would watch a movie and be cracking up, and like, me and Tommy would leave the theater and be like, "Oh, what was that line?" And then you would literally recite the entire scene,
even with the cadence of the voice. Like, I know how to do it. I don't know, man. Maybe I am autistic.
Yeah, you would do the impressions, and I'm like, how the fuck? Yeah. You've always been able to do that, so it's pretty remarkable.
So. This isn't really like a statistical example, but he brings up this essay that was written by this guy, Leonard Reed, called I, Pencil. Okay? I, Pencil was written in 1958, and is that a book? No, it's an essay from the perspective of a pencil. And it goes into what went into its creation, and from the... Yeah, I mean, how many things make up a pencil? There's graphite, there's cedar wood, there's wax, there's lacquer, there's rubber, there's metal, there's the people who mined the graphite, there's the people who cut down the tree that makes the cedar wood, there's the people who, refine the oil that will create the wax for the outside of the pencil, there's the people who created the alloy in the factory to make the metal, and there's the people who created whatever concoction makes up the rubber. And then each of those processes requires about, 75 people to make each one of those things. And then after that, those things have to get shipped to the place. So you got to have the lighthouse keeper who guides the ship into the harbor, the captain, the deckhands, all the people who work on the ship, the people who distributed the things from the ship to the place to get processed to become a pencil, and the guy who sweeps up the factory and each one of those factories after the thing. And the iPencil essay goes into just basically how almost literally unbelievably impossible it is that one pencil exists, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's because not one person knows how to make a pencil. No one person could make a pencil. I believe in the essay, the quote is, this is from the pencil's perspective, like how God can only make a tree, I submit that only God could make me. In that, no man can make a pencil. So how is there a pencil here, dude? How is there a pencil if not one person can make a pencil? Could you call it the collective intelligence of a species? Sure. But more, and this is part of the iPencil essay, he says, more fascinating still is that there is no mastermind here.
Right.
There's no being that is facilitating and forcefully directing the construction of a pencil specifically. Mm-hmm. It's just that all of these things are happening and then a pencil gets made. It's literally quite unbelievable. Cool. And this was in the 50s, right? And Leonard Reed, by the way, he's written like 25 books, countless essays. He's a very interesting guy.
Because you could say that about anything in this room.
And that's the thing. What are we surrounded by? A computer, iPhones, a coat, a couch, a microphone, beer within a can, a television, lights that just turn on when you flick a switch.
Yeah, and now no one person just built that.
Bro, it makes you believe in God.
Yeah.
Because you go, not that God made these things, but the hive mind of our species is like so profound.
It's almost like an ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Where it's like a plant, or a flower comes from the soil and feeds the bees, and the bees go make honey from the pollen, and it's like didn't they say if all bees disappeared, the whole world would just be rotting in a month or something? Bees run the economy.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. Like all almonds, basically. Bees are basically the single factor that produce almonds, effectively.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's almost like we are creating our own ecosystem of like we invent things,
technology.
But it's like no one person invents it. And I remember this guy AJ Jacobs. He's a journalist, and he wrote a few interesting books where he did things like this. One of them was called Living Biblically, where like he tried to live. That's interesting. For a year, he tried to live like
Mother Teresa, or
like
something?
No, like people in the Bible. So he'd like wear robes and stuff, and like he tried to get someone in Central Park to like stone him.
Because he like made a mistake. Or something.
Yeah. But he also wrote another book. I think it's called like Thanks 1,000. And the goal of the book was he wanted to thank every single person involved in the supply chain of producing his morning cup of coffee.
Bro, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, how? You'd have to thank 100,000 people.
That's
almost.
why it's called Thanks 1,000. He literally had to thank like the truck drivers, the people in Guatemala or wherever he was, and like it was a cool. I didn't read the book, but he I think he has some articles on it. He's
by the way, another reason to be optimistic is because since 1990, this is another statistic. Since 1990, the average IQ per for the average person in America has gone up 9.7 points.
Wow.
And you can argue that IQ doesn't necessarily, equate to like general intelligence, because some people don't believe in IQ. But like, look, there's something to be said for the test, right? Like, you're obviously not fucking retarded, right?
Should we take an IQ test?
We should do that.
We should do that.
You got to pay for it, though.
Do you?
I mean, I don't really care, but like, yes.
Yeah,
I've tried to take one. I don't even know what my IQ is. Can you imagine if I'm a fucking like idiot? Like I'm like a 98.
What's genius level? It's like 120
I think it's
or
over
something?
145, you're a genius. 145. I mean, it could be 100% wrong. I think it's like, if you're over 140, I think you're like well above average.
I wonder what we'd think we'd be,
God.
And then what we'd actually.
I don't want to know. Almost.
I'm gonna go low and be like 105.
Yeah, I'll be happy if I break 100.
Triple digits. I'd be happy with triple digits.
Yeah.
Give me 99. I'd be like, hey, all right, you know what?
Yeah. So but to my point about the IQ, it's like, the reason why that's the case in a lot of situations. I mean, globally, in America, not really, because we've had electricity for a while. But dude, he goes for like a whole bunch of pages about just lighting, right? Back in the day, going back to your point about time, to the amount of hours you would have to work to afford a candle for reading was 8 hours in like 1850 or something like that, or 1800 rather, because that was like well before electricity. So now, how long do you think you work, salary money wise, to light this room for 300 hours? How long do you think it's worth your time to light this room with electricity for 300 hours?
300 hours. Well,
you're not going to believe this.
I don't know how much it costs, but I would say based on my monthly electric bill, which is, for a whole house, it might be, $80 or something like that.
Exactly.
So for an hour's work, it's less than an hour.
It's half a second.
Oh my God.
You work for half a second to light this whole room for 300 hours.
That's
crazy. Do you know
crazy.
how much information you can now consume because of half a second of your time? Bro, back in the day, people had to work for 8 hours to have a candle. Because the wax and the wicker and how, okay, well, that's finite. It only lasts half an hour top, whatever, an hour tops. So then, okay, well, dude, a coat used to cost people a month's work. Like, that's the other thing, is that the difference in affordability is completely flipped, like since over the last 150 years. So going back to IQ, that's the reason why a lot, like, dude, generally speaking, people are smarter now than ever. They're richer now than ever. We have luxuries that King Louis XVI, who got overthrown because he was such a piece of shit, we have things that guy couldn't even imagine having, right? By the way, and even though he got things cooked for him, things were brought to him, he had salmonella like 16 times in his life. Like, there's no chance you'll get salmonella now.
Yeah, just like disease prevention is a massive one too.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I read Charlie Munger. You know who he is?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
So Charlie Munger, he was Warren Buffett's business partner for Berkshire Hathaway, one of the greatest investors of all time. Just passed away in November. He was 99 years old. He's considered one of the wisest people of kind of like the last 100 years, because obviously he's made billions of dollars. But I read his book. It's called Poor Charlie's Almanac. And it's basically just this guy.
Yeah, you loved it, right?
Oh, he's just such a fucking. He is a voracious reader, right? And he just thinks in such common sense because he's read all of the history, all of the psychology books. His whole thing is having a multidisciplinary approach. So like, he's like, I never went to college for like economics or to study business, but he's one of the greatest investors of all time.
Interesting.
Instead, he read biographies. He read psychology books. He read mathematics books, and he just taught himself all of these things. And he's smarter. He's not the smartest person in the room, but he's smarter than 99% of people in those fields.
Right.
Because he's read 3 psychology books, he's read 3 business books, he's read all these different subjects, and he distills all of his 99 years of wisdom of investing to just like a few simple rules. And like, he's just like, base it off of psychology. He's like, humans work off incentives, they work off envy. He's like, don't do stupid things. He's like, most of my life was not being the smartest person. It was just simply not doing dumb things.
Yeah.
And it was just like...
realizing behavior.
And one of my favorite quotes from the book, he said, the best way to get what you want is to deserve what you want.
Wow.
And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
He was just a G. He was just one of those guys that just like, you could... Like Benjamin Franklin, if just like a few of those quotes that hit you and you're like, damn, this guy's just so... He makes it so simple.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not that hard. You don't have to be smart.
Some people do have that. They walk into a room and they're just, well, there's the alpha.
Yeah.
They ain't me. It's him now. Like some people just have a presence, and they own a room. No matter what room they walk into, they just have a presence.
it was just fascinating to me how you read all these books about, how to be the best and how to invest or how to whatever. And he's just sitting there just like, it's not that hard.
It's really not that hard.
Yeah. Just read a few books. Don't be stupid. Like,
know
how your monkey brain works and know how to like not listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Let me end this with a joke.
Please.
I heard a joke recently. So funny, man. There's a dude, and he works at a grocery store. And he's stocking oranges on the shelf. Lady comes up to him, and she goes, "Excuse me, where's the broccoli?" He goes, "Oh, unfortunately, we actually ran out of broccoli today, but we're getting a shipment tonight. We should have it for you tomorrow morning." Goes back to stocking his oranges. Gets a tap on his shoulder this time. He turns around. It's the same woman. And she goes, "Hey, where's the broccoli? I can't find it." He goes, "Ma'am, I just told you we ran out of broccoli today. I'm very sorry, but we're going to get a shipment in tonight, and we should have broccoli tomorrow. Just come back tomorrow. You'll find it. No problem." Goes back to stocking his oranges. And then this time she stands right in front of him. She goes, "Hey, where's the broccoli?" He goes, "Ma'am, just humor me for a second. How do you spell dog, like in dogmatic?" She goes, "D-O-G." Goes, "Okay." He goes, "How do you spell cat, like in catastrophic?" She goes, C-A-T. He goes, "Okay." He goes, "How do you spell fuck, like in broccoli?" She goes, "There is no fucking broccoli." He goes, "That's what I'm trying to tell you, lady. There's no fucking broccoli, all right? Just get the fuck out of here." How good is that fucking joke? Dude,
joke.
I heard that. I cried. I thought that was so funny. That's a great joke. That's a great joke. Such a stupid joke, but it's such a good joke. I think I heard it on Harrison Ford told it on Conan O'Brien. Hilarious joke. Dude, the whole fucking audience was like standing up.
That's a
great joke.
Harrison Ford is like the perfect person to deliver
exactly,
that
because he's like kind of quiet.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. It's time to go to bed.
Great episode and tired.
Great episode.
Yeah. Thanks everyone
we should
for
end
listening.
with a joke every time.
Yeah, there's no fucking broccoli. Thanks
There's
everyone.
No fucking broccoli.
Yeah.
Not till tomorrow anyway.
All right. Thanks folks.
Thank you guys. Cheers.
Take care.